Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone. We are back for episode 5 of the Nurturing Fathers program. My name is Corey Perlman, and I'm here with my dad,
Mark Perlman. Hello, everybody, and welcome.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to do this. This is fun.
This has been fun, huh?
It has.
Well, there's nothing more fun in my mind than talking about discipline. But this is like where the rubber meets the road, right?
It's the big dog.
It's the big dog. You actually called it in our notes, the big dog.
I did.
It's a good way
This is what puzzles more parents and probably brings more parents into parenting classes than any other single subject.
It's the hardest thing. It's like the big gorilla in the room, so to speak. But let's start off.
Any more analogies you want to throw in?
No, that's it. It's the big dog, the big on the porch with a big collar. The thing you often say that I love to repeat about discipline is where the root word came from. When we start there,
that's a great way to start, Corey. I appreciate that. Discipline is used in our culture to mean he wasn't disciplined enough. He could use more discipline, and it's kind of means hitting. And that's what the culture assumes it is. Well, whether or not that's part of it, it's certainly not all of it. And basically, we're missing the biggest picture, and I think it gets us off on the wrong track. Discipline, from the root word, D-I-S-C-I-P-L, disciple, is all about leading and teaching. If you look at the root word, Latin, French, Spanish, whatever, leading and teaching, and that is what discipline is about. You know, our kids, every kid I've ever seen comes into the world untamed, wild. They don't know the difference between right or wrong. They don't know the difference between good or bad behavior. All they have is their impulses. Our job as a parent is to help shape them in that way from the age of 2 on to 22 or older sometimes. It was funny, wasn't it? No. 22.
42.
So yes, it's about leading and teaching. So every single episode of discipline, whatever the child does right or wrong that requires discipline, is about teaching. And it is basically teaching them the rules of the game, teaching what it means to be a good boy or a good girl, teaching what it means is to stay within the lines and not wander outside. And that prepares them for a healthy life, and it prepares them for succeeding in every arena that will follow, from preschool to big school to whatever they do in the world. They need to know that. Rules of the road, acceptable versus unacceptable behavior, all about teaching.
So that's great. And I think that part of what I struggle with a lot when it comes to discipline, and I think that others would probably agree, is that we often feel like we're flying by the seat of our pants. It seems like every day there's a different challenge or whatever the case may be. And I say to Jess all the time that oftentimes I feel like we're disciplining on the spot. And we are being reactive as opposed to proactive in our discipline approach. Do you hear that pretty commonly out there?
I did it myself. It was reactive. I mean, I waited for the child to screw up in some way, do something, unacceptable, and then just pounce on it.
Yeah.
So in a certain way, I was totally reactive. And I didn't feel it was working real well. That's when I was hitting more and yelling more and frustrated. It often comes out of frustration. It also comes out of anger. The worst time to discipline is out of frustration and anger, because our most effective teaching is when it's sober, clear, direct, and we'll give multiple examples. In fact, I have a whole blueprint to share with you. But proactive parenting really means we need to look at the word and what it means, teaching and leadership, and we need to see step by step what road we're going down so our kids get where we want them to go. It's strategic, and it's much better proactive. So that you and your wife, or my wife and I, have a plan in mind. And when this happens or that happens, or even if they throw us a curveball, we got some rules of the road, some guidelines, some things we can count on, fall back on.
I love the question that you pose in the book. Oftentimes, I ask myself this a lot in my discipline actions with my kids of, what is this teaching them? And one good example is actually my wife. When we were, it was technology day. that Talia had forgotten her iPad for school, and she was super excited to have it, but she didn't have it. And my initial reaction was to run and go get it for her, but then I had to ask, actually Jess asked me, what is that teaching her? That anytime something bad happens, dad's going to run and rescue it, but in this case, she had multiple warnings about, rushing to leave out of the house or whatever the case may be. But a perfect natural consequence to this was no iPad at the school that day. Now, has she ever forgotten it in the future? No, because that really ingrained in her the important lesson of being organized before you leave.
And basically what we call that is a natural consequence. And those are golden.
Yeah.
If you leave your skates or your bike outside and they get rained on or stolen, oops, they'll have them. Going to buy them somewhere right now? No, we're going to wait a while. Christmas is down the road. Because let them do without it. Because we've said, don't leave your skates outside. They're going to get lost or stolen. And it's exactly the same thing that you gave. So, and at that point, the teaching is in the actual experience itself. If we load it up with negativity, and how many times have I told you, it just really dilutes the point. She's sitting there without the laptop. There's no need for it.
The teaching lesson isn't exactly what had happened. We get to kind of stay out of the,
right.
We don't involve ourselves in the fact that you lose the teaching lesson at that point.
So when there is no natural consequence, which a whole lot of things are, then we provide it.
Right.
That's what we provide it. And basically the formula, if there is a formula, is choices and consequences, which we'll talk more about.
Well, let's talk about that now. I mean, with choices and consequences, I think, again, the common misnomer on consequences is that they're usually negative, but they can be positive too, right?
Well, pay attention to what you want to see more of. Dad's attention and mom's, but dad's attention in particular is golden to kids. Look at me, Dad. Look at me. Watch me. I mean, and if you pay attention to, you're likely to see more of. I think we're going to devote some time next one on that. So here's what I suggest to parents in terms of understanding the blueprint, if you will, for discipline. Look at team sports and let's look at how they do it, how the teamwork works, how game is played, how discipline works. And we'll see a whole lot about what families and parents can do. It starts with goals. The goals of basketball is to get the ball in the basket. Goal of every sport, pretty much score points, however you do it. And that is the goal, and that's what we need to keep in mind. What is the goal of being a family? And so we're going to start with goals, rules that come from those goals, strengthening the positive, lessening the negative, enhancing the positive, diminishing the negative. Those are the four pieces: goals, rules, enhancing the positive, diminishing the negative. So what are the goals of family life? We talk about the sanctity of family, importance of family. What do we hope to accomplish? What are families there for? Why don't you give me some thoughts on that, Corey?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important for us to, stay safe, to have a household of respect, and that we appreciate each other, and that we're being kind to each other, things of that nature, that we're following the rules of the house and all that. And I just want to take a step back real quick, Dad. I love this section, the Nurturing Fathers program, because we made the point in the very, very beginning that there's no manual for this stuff. But, you've come across something that kind of does provide a little bit of a manual, which many of us men, and really anyone in our society anyway, are so accustomed to, which is team sports, whether it be, you pick your favorite sports: soccer, basketball, baseball, football, hockey. It doesn't matter. They all have these great metaphors, correlations to discipline that when in doubt, you can look at this and be like, okay, so where am I in this spectrum of team sports? I think it's brilliant concept.
Thank you. Well, when I came up with this and I was doing this program for fathers, I know how discipline probably should look as a model, but I wanted something that would be a hook for men, hook for fathers, and discipline. Boom. Came to my mind literally as I opened my eyes one morning. I pulled that thread and it's like, wow, it's all there. It's all there. So after goals, players in basketball, football, they all share a goal. Now our parents share a goal. Our family shares a goal. Take those goals that Corey just summarized for your family. You and your wife have a conversation about what are the goals of this family. Is it safety? Is it love? Is it financial security? Is it education? Whatever those are, and your list will may be similar or different from that. That list should be shared with your children at every opportunity. Discussions around the dinner table, how we organize birthday celebrations, what kind of sports teams they're on, what kind of friends they choose. Those goals should be infused into as much of family life as possible. So we don't keep it a secret. We share those in as many creative ways of family life as we possibly can. What follows on the basketball court after the goal is clear is, what do all these lines mean? There's a line in the middle. There's a half circle there. There's a line for foul shot. There's a whole boundary border there. Every one of those lines represents a rule or a boundary. Every one of them. If you do this, step out of that sideline, boom, ball goes the other way. Play within, continue playing the game. Hit the guy on the line, and whistle blows. Foul shot. That's how it goes night after night after night. The rules are very clearly stated. Where are they stated? In the rule book. Who knows the rules? Who knows the rules?
Everybody.
Everybody.
That's what I love so much about this analogy, this particular one, is I always ask my guys in the prison, when the ball bounces out of bounds off of your knee, whose ball is it? Every single time, right? There's never a time where the guy goes, it's been a while since you've knocked the ball out of bounds. I'm going to give you a break on this one. I'm going to go the other way. Now, the ref might miss it, and that's different. But every single time, the rule is always the same. Yeah, same thing with offsides.
He doesn't buy it. It's like, well, it was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose,
Well, it's still a rule.
The ball goes outside, right.
It's a brilliant concept. You think that, it is the rule. Consistency. It's amazing when it comes to that stuff. And, the same thing, when you think about the other thing with the rules, and I know you're about to go into Thunder a little bit, but there's degrees of rules. I ask the guys oftentimes when it comes to football, how much is offsides? Everybody in the room. When it's offsides, 5 yards. Everybody knows it's 5 yards. Holding, 10 yards. Pass interference, 15 yards. Punch a guy in the helmet, out of the game. Do drugs, out for the season. They know it like clockwork, and there are all degrees, right? There's all these different degrees.
Yes.
Same thing with rules.
So the consequences basically follow the severity or seriousness of the infraction. And, the whistle blows, the ref puts his hands out, boom, the ball goes into his hands. It's really amazing how well this works. And with the stakes of the game couldn't be higher. You're getting paid $10 million a year or something like that. So the rules for the family are just a faction. What I like is for the parents to sit down, make the rules for the small kids. Once you get to middle school kids or high school kids, I like that to be a family meeting. Everybody participates in making the rules. That freaks parents out a little sometimes. Like, well, I'm not going to give that power away. You never give your power away. The kids don't make the rules, but the kids participate in the process. Parents always have the right to be the final arbiter or say so. So when you have your 14-year-old and 17-year-old at the table, or even the 5-year-old, their voices are being heard. What I have found with teenagers is the consequences for infractions are much more severe in their mind than I would have.
I think that's the same. I was going to tell you that it works just as well with little kids. It really does, because they'll actually go worse. Just like you're saying, more severe. Like, Milo, you don't have to take like 3 weeks off your video game, but we do it together. And so they're just as good at it at 5.
I've heard 15-years say, well, if you stay out behind after curfew, what should it be? So, well, ground me for a week. I said, well, start with 1 day.
Yeah.
Not a week.
Now you're being the nice guy. The parents being the good guy.
I'm not going to also be home for a week to watch you.
Yeah.
But that's okay too. So we got the rules and we got the family rules. And the family rules basically should look like this. Everybody jumps to don'ts. Well, what happens when they don't do this? What happens when they screw up? Well, yeah, but you got to start with the do's. You got to, what is the right behavior? Okay, don't throw your toys. Do play with your toys on the ground. Don't throw your food. Keep your food on the plate. Don't stay out after 8 o'clock. Come home or call me. So every rule has a do and a don't. It's not enough to tell kids what not to do. They need to know what to do and a consequence. So it sounds like this: choices and consequences. If you throw your food, it's time out for 2 minutes. If you don't throw your food, if you keep your food on the plate, stay here, we keep having a good time, telling jokes at the table.
So I want to give another kind of analogy towards the sports. Sometimes something comes up that's sort of unusual, a kid, did something that's not something not coming to mind, but something unusual. Well, what happens in sports? Sometimes an unusual penalty happens or some unusual situation in the game. The refs huddle up together and they talk about it, and then they come up and they make a decision. Same thing with the parents. Okay, something unusual just happened on the bus, let's say, something happened on the bus that you just told us about. You don't have to discipline right away. You can say, thank you for letting us know. Mommy and Daddy are going to talk about it a little bit. We'll come back and we'll let you know our decision.
Great. Perfect. And it's done kind of soberly and calmly and clearly, and just as the referees do it. Referees don't jump up and down and yell. They don't grab the guys by the collar. That's the way it is. So here's some good guidelines for rulemaking. Let the whole family participate. Mm-hmm. Fewer are better. 3, 4, 5 are great. Focus on the big things, the things that matter most. Be sensitive to ages and stages. 5-year-old rules will look different than 14-year-old rules. Consistency, in employing them. Any parent can give a single another chance if they want to. That's your prerogative. But as you see with the referees in sports, it's pretty consistent, almost to the point of rigidity. Because if you're not, then the question in the kids' mind, because they're kids, is, well, will this be called or not? Maybe I can get away with it.
Yeah.
So you don't want that wiggle room.
Imagine that in sports. It would be complete anarchy. I mean, you have to be complete consistency. The other two things that I like in terms of the rules there are degrees of discipline. I think are just absolutely important. This helps with hitting a lot. If spanking is part of your repertoire, if it's on the far end, right? I mean, just the absolute worst, then there should be 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10 different levels of discipline, just like in sports. 5-yard infraction. What is your 5-yard infraction? What is your 5? Is it a timeout? What's your 10-yard? What's your 15-yard? What's your out of the game infraction? Have those different degrees based upon the behavior that they do. And the other thing that you mentioned too is the dues. Again, you see it a lot. This is more with the coaches, and so you got the referees and the coaches and the players. The coaches are kind of like, I guess the parents are kind of coaches and referees to some degree, but the coaches give the ball to the running back more when they do a good job, right? They give more freedom to the quarterback to call plays when they show in the game that they can manage the game. Same thing with our kids. The more that they do well and do as we ask and and the family rules, the more the leashes kind of loosened up.
So that is why the very next step, number 3, after the goals and rules, is encourage the positive. Encourage what you want to see. Again, what you pay attention to, you see more of. Sports knows that 110%. There are high fives everywhere. There are pats on the back. There are whispers in each other's ear about how they did. The guy is allowed to play more. He's on the starting team the next game. They reward doing well. They reward doing right. Even if they miss a foul shot, what do their teammates do?
Pump them up.
Pump them up. Yeah. High five, pat on the back. You can do it. So that's the model we want to use. We want to be the biggest cheerleaders for our kids doing the right things. And you will see more of that. They want to please mom and dad, basically. I mean, they're really kind of wired to do that. So the more you pay attention to the good stuff, the more of it you'll see.
And the thing that you mentioned, which I think is critical, I've heard it in other parenting programs too, so we're not alone in saying this, but it's absolutely critical, is not forgetting to tell them what to do. And I make this mistake all the time. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't you do this, and do not do this.
Right.
Well, what about what should you do? You just told them 5 don'ts and not 1 do.
Right.
So don't forget the do's. I think that is very important.
So in terms of encouraging the positive, be a little bit more specific. You can do verbal praise. You can do encouragement, a little bit different than plays. They didn't get it quite right, but come on, baby, you can do it. Try again. Trying to hit that ball, trying to do this. You can try it again. Almost got it. It's just like the sports thing. Keeps their energy up, keeps them moving forward, keeps their self-esteem up. You never want to basically bring their self-esteem down. Then they're just going to perform more poorly. So praise, encouragement. You can give rewards. You can give privileges. So you give them more of what they want. You can stay up an hour later. We can watch this movie together. You can have your dessert if you finish those peas on your plate. Whatever that is, but hang the little thing off the stick, the little and keep moving in that direction.
So when it comes to encouragement, discouragement, I look at the parents obviously like the coach. So you switch from the referee a little bit analogy to the coach. And I always ask the guys, what coach would you like to emulate as a dad? I said, I'm going to give you guys 2 examples. Bobby Knight, Indiana, and Phil Jackson from Chicago Bulls, LA Lakers. And they all, without a shadow of a doubt, they always say Phil Jackson most of the time, 99.9% of the time. Well, why? Well, maybe one was more successful than the other. I think Phil Jackson was, but let's just assume for a second that they're both equally successful. Why would you want to be Phil Jackson? Well, he was able to get the most out of his players without throwing chairs and getting angry and physically or verbally abusing his kids. Phil Jackson was able to do it, from at least from what we could see, with respect, with nurturing, with care, with, integrity, and maybe it's not Phil Jackson, maybe it's another coach that but generally speaking, we see the coaches that we want to emulate, that we respect, that we admire, they're not the ones that carry a large stick and swat around all the time.
Throw chairs.
Or throw chairs.
What kind of teaching or role modeling is that? Because the kids can do it, So you got your 2-year-old on the floor, you got your infant not too far away, and the 2-year-old throws the truck for the second time. And, what do? Do you grab him? Do you hit him? Do you yell at him? I mean, I get down on one knee and I look at him and I say firmly, I told you not to throw your toys. You don't want to hit your baby brother or baby sister. We really don't want that to happen. So we're going to put these toys away for 15 minutes now. But I want to play. I know you want to play. Don't throw your toys. We'll play with the toys 15 minutes again. Come help me put them away. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the Phil Jackson approach. Mm-hmm. It's very calm and it's very straight. It's not offensive in any way, but the point gets across. And
another thing that you see out of some of these coaches that are great to emulate is when the umpire or whomever they're dealing with is furious or it's a player, matching that furiousness is not helpful. You know, like when your kid, and you tell me this all the time, when my kids are going crazy on their tantrums, that's not a time to discipline. They're not there. They're in red zone. They're in crazy zone. So matching them in crazy red zone is not what a coach does. A coach, take your time, bud. Let's calm down. Come here, bud. Let me give you a hug. Let's chill out a little bit. Let's figure this out together. There's still time for discipline down the road. We're going to correct this behavior, but now is not the time. That's what a good coach
point.
does.
When emotions are running high in the kid or in the parent, not a good time.
Not a good time for it.
Want to discipline from a very calm, clear perspective. So we've got to paying attention to the positive in the sports and in the home. It's really powerful. So I want to emphasize it. So many people jump from rules to catch them doing wrong. That's important, but don't skip over your most powerful shaping teaching is to catch them doing right. To look at, reward the behavior that you want to see more of, pay attention to it, powerful. And then they're going to screw up, of course, as all kids do. So when they do, let's give a couple of examples of this choices and consequences is the overall most powerful tool. What we're doing here is we're saying, if you choose the acceptable behavior, expect this to follow. If you choose the unacceptable behavior, expect this to follow, much less desirable consequence. It's your choice. So what we're doing is we are building the power muscle in our kids, helping them learn to make good choices, that good choices pay off more than bad choices. And at the same time, we're calm. We're not attacking them physically or emotionally. We can have parents yell at their kids and call names, really not helpful, and it doesn't teach. So if it's all about teaching, this keeps the focus on teaching. So what if the kid, we have a no throwing food at the table, and a little 2-year-old just, flicks that pea and it whizzes by my head, and it's like, whoa. Say to my wife, did you throw a pea? No. Did you throw that? So what are our choices there, Corey, in terms of how to deal with that? No throwing food at the table, and boom, there it is.
Well, they can, we don't throw food at the table, so we can remove them. You can ask them to leave the table because that's not part of our rules of that, and try again in a little while. Or the plate can be taken up if it's been done multiple times, and that's it for the night.
And if they learn not to throw the food, then they're happy to stay there and play. Same thing with throwing toys when they're real small, if there's a baby sister or brother around, and just in general. And it goes on through middle school and through high school. We used the analogy before of curfew. Curfew is stretching the boundaries of what they're capable of doing because they've earned that right. They've showed us their ability to do it. So the process is, if you will, the circle of discipline, the circle of responsibility keeps expanding. Mm-hmm. That's what we want until, this kid's got it. They're responsible, but slowly keeps expanding as they do it right. And when they screw up, boom, circle contracts a little bit. They lose something, and then it starts to expand a little bit. And that's sort of an image, if you would like. So in an older child, let's say we've got the curfew thing on Friday night. I need to hear, if you can't be home by your 8 o'clock curfew, 14-year-old, I must get a phone call within 15 minutes. We need to know where you are because we worry. Okay. If you don't call, the consequences, you lose one of your weekend nights out.
Yeah. And I think, the key to this, and again, very clear in the sports analogy as well, is have these rules up front in advance and if possible on paper somewhere. I mean, one of the things that Jess and I do, especially when your kids become readers, is to have it out there. So you literally can point to it in your living room or somewhere there. Another thing that I don't do as well as Jess does is we should follow the rules too in a lot of circumstances. So if there's no cursing, or right. whatever the case may be, parents try to follow the rules too, because it shows them that you're taking these seriously too. And
that's a really good point, because the rules apply to the whole family unless they don't. Yeah. Like curfew. I don't have an 8 o'clock curfew. So what happens if that 14-year-old says to me as a father, or to you, Corey, my 17-year-old brother stays out till 10. That seems unfair. Why does he have a different curfew? Because some fathers would really fly off the handle at that's like offensive. And to me, it's like, whoa, what a wonderful teaching opportunity this is. So what might you respond to that question from the 14-year-old?
Well, with age comes additional responsibility. And the classic thing is with your previous behavior comes additional responsibility, you know? And so same thing as I mentioned in the sports analogy, the 17-year-old has earned the right to stay out later due to, you know, meeting the requirements that they had in the past, keeping up their grades, you know, that kind of thing. So, and hopefully you'll have that opportunity too as years go on.
Yeah. In fact, you will have that opportunity. I guarantee you'll get there, which is true. You know, I have faith in you, of confidence. And I also mentioned this tough stuff that goes on out there that he is capable of dealing with now. He's learned that, and you will learn it, but you're not quite there yet. But just think of what a nice opportunity is to explain some of why curfews are there and how the world works and what you earn in ages as you get older, what you have to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try and put it in a personal context. You will definitely get there. I can guarantee you that. It's just going to take time. You'll be there as well.
So, you know, we're kind of getting to I would say the witching hour here of this one. It's a meaty one, as you know, we could spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to just emphasize a few things to dads out there in particular. One is just how powerful this analogy metaphor of team sports is and how you really can rely on it when questioning sort of your discipline plan or your discipline principles or fundamentals or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and I just asked them too, if they want to write it down, remember goals, rules, encourage positive behavior, discourage negative. Those are four main parts.
Yeah, what are the overall goals? You know, literally draw it out, you know, in terms of, you know, what your family rules are. As we mentioned, the different infractions, and encourage everybody to be a part of that discussion, because then it takes you out. This is the most brilliant part of this. It takes you out of being the bad guy. You know, now you're following the rules. You're not following your rules, or you're not being the jerk. You know, you're simply the coach or the referee, you know, playing by the rules. And it really does kind of take you out of being the bad guy role a lot of the time, or the mom being the bad mom out of it, and sort of allows, you know, then again, as you talked about earlier, Dad, to take responsibility because they did the action that caused that rule infraction.
Yeah, a couple of other quick things that I think help make this whole system work. Quality of your connection with the child is key. If you've spent the time, played your games, had your fun, have respect together, built that relationship, the rest of this stuff will work. If that's not the case, if there's not that much relationship there, no tools or magic are going to do it. Relationship's important. Mom and dad need to agree as much as possible, be a united front. And lastly, don't forget humor and fun. I mean, parenting is not deadly serious game, and it's got its aspect of humor. Some of the times kids screw up, some of the things they do are hysterical. Allow the fun and lightness, you know, its place as well.
Well, I think a good word to come in mind there is grace. You know, oftentimes you find opportunities to be able to provide grace. And so good coaches provide grace and give second chances and unconditional love and all that kind of thing. But gosh, man, I'll tell you, it's so nice to have something to be able to lean on in such a critical part of our kids' development. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart, which is team sports. And to be able to think through all the different nuances with that, you know, and think about all the different similarities and connection that discipline has with team sports. It's just so powerful. We are the coaches, we are the refs, and our children are the players. And we're all, especially the coaches and the players, we're all the same goal.
The team.
You know, we all have the same goal, man. We want to get you to the end zone. We're going to get you to the end zone, you know, and that is just a really neat way of thinking about it.
You want to do a cheer here? No.
Hip, hip, hooray. Give me that. All right, man. Well, I think that about covers it for discipline. Again, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts about this, you know, we know it ain't perfect. We'd love to know how you're doing with it. If you created a public rules with your family, we'd love to hear about them. We'd love to take a picture, show them.
Sure. And we will come back to this issue over and over and over again because everything kind of feeds into it.
Yeah, but give it a try, man. Give it a try. Try to create this family plan together of rules as if, you know, you were creating your own unique sport, right?
Great. And the time you put into that up front will save you an incredible amount of time and hassle down the road.
It's true. And make sure you update those rules too, as you said, ages and stages. Things obviously get much different as kids get older. So awesome discussion, Dad. I appreciate it.
Buddy. Fun.
And we'll see you guys on the next one, the Nurturing Fathers Podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.